You're listening to IsReal News, 3 daily briefings on the Middle East and on global developments.
From IsReal News, this is the Midday briefing for Wednesday, April 22nd. Israel says it has now been updated on President Donald Trump's new deadline for Iran. The understanding in Jerusalem is that the ceasefire has until Sunday, according to a report by Israel's Channel 12. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is expected to hold more discussions tomorrow as Israel completes additional defensive and offensive preparations. Israeli officials say they do not see a path to an agreement unless one side makes a dramatic concession. Under those conditions, they view a renewed military scenario as highly likely. Iran, for its part, still has not decided whether it will return to negotiations. Iranian Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf says a full ceasefire makes sense only if it is not violated by what he calls a naval blockade and economic hostage-taking. He says the United States has failed to achieve its goals through military aggression and will not succeed through intimidation. Iran's foreign ministry spokesman, who took part in the first round of talks in Islamabad, tells the BBC that Tehran entered negotiations in good faith, but says the other side showed a lack of seriousness and good faith. He also says Iran has not yet decided whether going back to Islamabad serves its national interest. American officials say there is now a deep internal split inside Iran. According to several senior U.S. officials cited by Israel's Channel 12, the Trump team believes it may still be possible to reach a deal, but there is growing doubt over whether the Iranians at the table are actually the ones making the decisions. One American official says there is a complete fracture inside Iran between the negotiating team and the military, especially the Revolutionary Guard. The report says neither side appears to have full access to Iran's supreme leader, who is described as largely unresponsive and not issuing clear decisions. No new round of talks has been scheduled. Pakistani mediators are still waiting, hoping that in the next day or two, Iran's leadership will issue a directive that gives its negotiating team a clear mandate. U.S. officials say Trump believes he has achieved nearly the maximum possible through military means and now wants to test whether a deal is still possible. But they also say if diplomacy is exhausted and fails, the military option will return to the center of the table. The ceasefire in Lebanon is also under growing strain. Israeli military sources say it could collapse at any moment. Hezbollah is accused of trying to create its own rules for the truce while continuing to regroup and launch rockets and drones. Lebanese media report that 2 female journalists were wounded in an Israeli airstrike in southern Lebanon. One report says rescue teams later recovered 2 bodies and one of the journalists while failing to reach the other. Lebanon accuses Israel of obstructing rescue efforts. Israel says the incident is under review, says the area had been evacuated of civilians, and insists it does not target journalists. Israeli military officials describe the ceasefire as fragile. They say Hezbollah is trying to reorganize under cover of the truce, and that Israel is determined to finish securing the area to prevent direct fire on northern communities. The United States, however, is opposing renewed fighting in Lebanon, while negotiations with Iran continue. There are also new questions about Iran's military condition. A CBS report says Iran may retain more capability than the White House and Pentagon have suggested. American officials tell the network that about half of Iran's ballistic missiles and launchers are still intact. Around 60% of the Revolutionary Guard's naval arm is still functioning, and roughly 2/3 of Iran's air force remains operational. That stands in contrast to statements from the administration. A Pentagon spokesman says U.S. forces have delivered devastating blows to Iran in less than 40 days, and says more than 90% of Iran's navy has been destroyed, and there are new signs that the U.S. naval blockade on Iran may be less airtight than advertised. Reports say dozens of ships linked to Iran have managed to evade the blockade since it began on April 13th. According to shipping data cited by the Financial Times, several tankers carrying Iranian crude have left the Gulf, while others have entered from the Arabian Sea. Bloomberg also reports satellite imagery confirms that at least 2 Iranian oil tankers broke through the blockade, carrying millions of barrels of oil. President Trump says Iran is losing $500 million a day and is starving for cash. But the latest reports suggest some Iranian oil is still getting through. Those are the latest headlines from IsReal News.
Follow IsReal News for 3 daily briefings. Fast, factual, and to the point.